Today's story raises a much bigger question. What are the Albanese government's priorities? Because while Australian families are struggling to find somewhere to live, the government continues to bring hundreds of thousands more people into the country. Analysis by the Institute of Public Affairs found net permanent and long-term arrivals reached more than 480,000 in the 12 months to May. That's the highest figure ever recorded for that period. And despite repeated claims that Australia needs record migration to fill critical skill shortages, the IPA says it's a different story.
There are 185 permanent visas granted, and of that, about 71% are given under the skilled visa program. But only 60,000 of the total 185,000 total permanent visas are actually skilled migrants. Now, no one is suggesting that we have a family separation policy when it comes to our migration policy. That's absurd. But the government should at least be honest about what our skilled migration program actually is, particularly when we are having a record net overseas migration program under this Albanese government.
This analysis raises a bigger question. If Australians are being asked to support one of the largest migration programs in our history, then we need transparency around this. Didn't Anthony Albanese promise to do politics differently?
The truth is that we're an open, transparent party. There needs to be complete transparency. What we need is a Prime Minister who's prepared to be transparent. A more honest and transparent government going forward. We will make it transparent. We're being transparent.
Imagine this. 300,000 people are lined up patiently waiting to become Australian citizens. And somehow, mysteriously, the ceremonies keep landing in the most politically convenient postcodes right before an election. Coincidence? Stick around, because by the end of this, you might be asking the same awkward question everyone in Canberra is avoiding. Quick favour, if you are loving this breakdown, let me see you hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell to stay informed. Thanks if you did. Now, let us get back to it.
Today, we're learning that local councils are being asked to increase the number of citizenship ceremonies to work through a backlog estimated at around 300,000 approved applicants. Liverpool Mayor Ned Manoon says the Department of Home Affairs asked the council to increase the number of these ceremonies. The former Cumberland Mayor says ceremonies in his area have tripled, and he says they've been politicised, with state and federal MPs sitting in the front row to win over new voters. An independent New South Wales MP, Rod Roberts, has accused the government of trying to mint new voters ahead of the next federal election, saying people come into the country, get their citizenship, receive their benefits and feel obliged to repay the government in some way. Now, that's a serious accusation. The government denies any political motivation and says it's simply trying to reduce waiting times for approved applicants. But Labor has invited this suspicion. Last year, the Home Affairs Minister, Tony Burke, faced similar accusations. Weeks before the federal election, a ceremony held at Olympic Park saw the majority of the 4,500 new citizens lived in the marginal seats of Parramatta and Reid. At the time, Home Affairs Department Secretary Stephanie Foster revealed that Tony Burke asked officials to organise ceremonies around his availability.
The Minister asked us to schedule ceremonies. He gave us a window of availability and we scheduled ceremonies.
So he directed you to hold these ceremonies when he was available to attend them?
Now, Mr Burke has made no apology for accelerating the process. He says that if he had it his way, citizenship ceremonies would be held every day. But Australians are entitled to ask, why does the government move with such urgency on citizenship ceremonies? Now, these don't create the population pressure. They occur at the end of a much longer immigration process, but they expose a government focused on processing migration, not managing its impact on Australians. And perception matters. When ceremonies are expanded before an election, when politicians are seated prominently at the front, and when thousands of potential new voters are being processed in politically important areas, the government should expect questions. The Albanese government says this is simply about clearing a backlog. If so, it should release the full figures. Tell Australians where the ceremonies are being increased, explain how the locations were chosen, reveal how many approved applicants will become eligible to enrol before the next election. Transparency would help remove any suspicion that politics is influencing the process. But the broader failure remains. Australia cannot keep running a population program disconnected from housing, infrastructure and living standards. You can't add hundreds of thousands of people while homes remain scarce, and then act surprised when rents surge, roads clog and services buckle. A responsible government would put Australians' quality of life at the centre of its population policy. But this looks like votes are being put ahead of people.
There is a genuine backlog, roughly 300,000 approved citizenship applicants still waiting for their ceremony. That is a real administrative headache, no argument there. But here's where it gets interesting. Councils in places like Liverpool and the former Cumberland region were reportedly asked by the Department of Home Affairs to triple their ceremony numbers. Tripling is not a small tweak, that is a full engine rebuild. And when you triple anything in government, people naturally ask, why now and why here? Now let us talk locations, because location is everything in real estate, and apparently in citizenship ceremonies too. Federal and state politicians have been spotted front and centre at these events, shaking hands, taking photos, looking every bit like they are auditioning for gratitude points. The former Cumberland Mayor did not mince words, calling the ceremonies politicised, and independent New South Wales MP Rod Roberts put it even more bluntly, suggesting the government is effectively minting new voters. Picture a factory line, except instead of widgets coming out the other end, it's freshly loyal ballots. Speaking of history repeating itself, rewind to before the 2022 federal election. A massive ceremony at Olympic Park welcomed around 4,500 new citizens. The kicker? A majority of them lived in the marginal seats of Parramatta and Reid. That is not a dart thrown blindfolded, that is a bullseye. And when the Home Affairs Secretary was asked about scheduling, the answer was that the minister's own availability drove the timing, not demographic need or logistical planning. Convenient for the minister, questionable for public trust. Now, let us hear the other side of the ledger, because fairness matters. The government's official line is simple. They are clearing a backlog and reducing wait times for people who have already earned their citizenship. The minister has said he would happily run ceremonies every single day if it meant fewer people waiting. On its face, that sounds reasonable. Nobody wants applicants stuck in limbo for years. The problem isn't the goal, it's the optics. When ceremony timing lines up suspiciously well with electoral calendars, transparency becomes the antidote. Commentators have been calling for the full disaggregated data, which locations, which volumes, what criteria decided all of it, and crucially, how many of these new citizens will be eligible to vote before the next election. Release the numbers and the conspiracy theories evaporate. Withhold them and suspicion only grows, like mold in a sharehouse nobody wants to clean.